Birthdays were never a big deal in our house, at least not mine. My name is Hannah Whitlock, and I was born on July 10th, 1997. I'm the youngest of three, and honestly, the quietest. My sister Courtney got all the charm, my brother Dean the brains. I was the in-between, always trying to prove something, but never quite getting it right. We grew up in a colonial-style home in Charleston, South Carolina, with creaky hardwood floors, a chipped mailbox, and a wraparound porch that looked like it belonged in a Nicholas Sparks movie. It was picturesque from the outside, but inside, it was quieter, a little colder. Dad was a contractor, the kind who built homes for other families, always talking about stability and structure, but somehow forgot to do the same for us emotionally. Mom passed away when I was 12. Brain aneurysm. One moment she was in the kitchen, frosting cupcakes for my school bake sale, and the next, she was gone. After that, things shifted. The light in our house dimmed, not just literally, but in a way you could feel deep in your chest. Courtney moved out first, married young, had 2 kids by 25. Dean followed, off to Georgia Tech, and then some corporate job that paid too well for him to ever return to our sleepy town. And me? I stayed. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of loyalty. Maybe I was just waiting for Dad to look me in the eyes again. Every year, my birthday felt more like a countdown to disappointment. It was always, sorry, work ran late, or we'll do something next weekend. Eventually, I stopped hoping. I started buying my own cake, making my own plans, sometimes sitting in my room pretending I was on a beach in another life. But this year, my 27th, I decided things would be different. I'd been living on my own for 4 years now, in a modest duplex on the east side of town. I worked as a freelance interior designer and had just landed a client big enough to allow me a few extra indulgences. For once, I felt like I was finally getting ahead, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to want something. Not gifts, not balloons, just a call, a text, a sign that my father remembered I existed. The morning of July 10th, I woke up early. I made myself banana pancakes, brewed a strong cup of hazelnut coffee, and let sunlight filter through the open kitchen window. It was peaceful, hopeful even. I kept glancing at my phone every hour. No messages, nothing on Facebook, not even one of those obligatory HBD posts people throw out of courtesy. By noon, I felt the old sting again. But I told myself to wait. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he was planning a surprise. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the year he came through. I even drove by his house around 3 p.m., just to peek in. His truck was there, parked slightly crooked like always. I hesitated to ring the bell. My hands were literally shaking, but I told myself not to be desperate. Let him come to me. By 7 p.m., I broke. I called. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. I didn't leave one. Instead, I sat on my couch, staring at the ceiling fan, letting it lull me into that dangerous, familiar numbness. The silence in my apartment was only broken by the distant hum of cicadas and the occasional car passing down the street. That's when I realized I hadn't just been waiting for a birthday wish. I'd been waiting for recognition, validation, proof that my existence mattered to someone who should have cared first and most. And when that didn't come, something inside me snapped, not in a loud, screaming kind of way, more like a quiet folding, a soft sigh after holding your breath for too long. I opened my laptop and logged into the shared utilities account I still managed for his house. After Mom died, he never quite figured out online billing. I used to do it as a favor. This time, it felt different. This time, I looked at that electric due July 12th line and thought, asterisk, he wouldn't even notice I'm the one paying it. He probably assumes the lights just stay on. Asterisk. My finger hovered over the pause service button. I thought about it. Not as revenge, not even as punishment, but as a reminder. If he didn't want to see me, maybe he'd feel what my absence really meant. I clicked. The lights would go out by midnight. I shut my laptop and stood in the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water with shaky hands. And that's when the guilt kicked in. Maybe it was cruel. Maybe I was being petty, but for once, I didn't stop myself. The next morning, I didn't expect anything. I went about my day, worked on design sketches, met a client for lunch, and then, around 4 p.m., I heard a loud knock on my front door. It was him, my father. He stood there looking smaller, like the man who used to lift me onto his shoulders had shrunk beneath the weight of the years. His baseball cap was pulled low, his gray beard more scruffy than usual. His eyes were rimmed red, not like he had cried, but like he hadn't slept. "Power went out last night," he mumbled. I crossed my arms. "Yeah?" I couldn't figure out why. Called the company. They said it was paused from this account. He looked down at the porch floorboards. "Your name's still on the billing." I said nothing, just let the silence thicken. Then he looked up, and for the first time in a decade, his voice cracked. "I forgot, didn't I?" I didn't answer. He took off his hat, rubbed his forehead, and his eyes brimmed. "Hannah, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I keep screwing this up." I should have told him. I should have said, "I needed you." Just once. But I didn't. I just watched as my father, this proud, gruff man who hadn't hugged me in years, stood on my porch with tears in his eyes and whispered, "I don't deserve your kindness anymore." The power was just a switch, but for once, maybe it helped him finally see the light. I didn't know what to say at first. Dad stood there like a broken statue, trying to piece together years in a single apology. His hands trembled as he reached into his back pocket, pulling out a folded card. It was small, bent at the corners, one of those blank greeting cards from the grocery store with a watercolor flower on the front. It didn't say "Happy Birthday." It didn't say anything. But inside, he had scribbled a note in that jagged print I remembered from childhood lunchbox notes. Asterisk, "You deserved better than silence. I don't know how to be your father anymore, but I want to learn. Love, Dad." Asterisk. It hit harder than I expected, because in that one line, he said more than he had in years. Still, I kept my arms crossed. I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. He sat down on the top step of my porch, letting out a long breath like he'd been holding it in since Mom died. "After your mom passed," he said, his voice thin, "I didn't know how to talk to you. You looked just like her. Same eyes, same stubborn streak. Every time he smiled, I saw her, and it hurt." I stayed silent. I could feel the tears pressing behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. He wasn't the only one who had lost her, but he was the only one who vanished while still standing right in front of me. "I thought keeping my distance would protect us both," he continued. "I thought maybe, if I didn't show how broken I was, you'd stay whole." "You didn't protect me," I said, my voice finally steady. "You abandoned me. You let me fade into the background. Do you know how it feels to sit alone on your birthday and pretend it doesn't matter?" He nodded slowly. "I do. I had birthdays like that when I was your age. That's probably why I didn't know how to show up for yours. But that's not an excuse. It's just the truth." That was the first time I ever heard my father speak about his own childhood. I knew vaguely that his dad had been an alcoholic and that his mother left when he was a teenager, but he'd always buried that under thick silence. He stood up and gestured toward my front door. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of lavender, my favorite scent. He looked around, eyes scanning the modest furniture, the soft gray tones of the walls, the potted succulents lined up on the windowsill. "You always had a good eye for this kind of thing," he said. "It's my job," I replied quietly. He smiled faintly, then sat on the edge of the couch like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to get comfortable. I sat across from him, on the armchair by the bookshelf. For a while, we just listened to the hum of the ceiling fan. Then he spoke again. "I haven't celebrated my birthday since Mom died. Didn't feel right. Didn't want to. But you," he looked down at his hands, "you deserved something different. I just didn't know how to give it." "You didn't even text me," I whispered. "I know. And every hour that passed, I thought about it. But the longer I waited, the worse it felt. I thought maybe if I ignored it, I could avoid the shame. I shook my head. You've been doing that for years. Voiding, ignoring, pretending we're not strangers in the same town. He winced at that. I didn't mean to be a stranger. But you are. The words came out sharper than I meant, but they were true. The man who used to fix my bike and braid my hair in crooked lines was gone. In his place stood someone I barely recognized, haunted, hesitant, full of regrets. And yet, there he was. Trying. That was new. I'll turn the power back on, I said softly. He shook his head. Don't. I don't want you paying for my house anymore. I'll take care of it. You said that last year, and the year before that. I mean it this time. I've heard that before, too. He looked up, and his eyes were glassy again. What do I have to do, Hannah? What would make it right? I thought about it for a long time. There was no magic phrase, no gesture that could undo years of absence. What I needed wasn't grand. It was consistency, effort, proof that I wasn't just someone he remembered on accident, but someone he prioritized on purpose. Start by showing up, I said. Not just today, not just when you feel guilty, but every day. The small ways, a phone call, a coffee. Come to my art show next week. Show me you still know how to be a part of my life. He nodded. I will. You say that. I know, he cut in. But this time, I promise. There was a pause. Then he pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small rectangular gift box wrapped in wrinkled brown paper. I bought this weeks ago. Didn't know how to give it to you. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a silver pendant necklace with a tiny engraved charm. It was a daffodil, my mother's favorite flower, and etched on the back were 2 words. Still here. My throat tightened. I looked up at him and he said, Your mom would have wanted me to fight for you. I failed her, but I don't want to keep failing you. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not the angry tears, not the quiet ones I hid behind my bedroom door, but the real kind. The kind that came from the little girl inside me who had waited so long to feel like somebody's child again. We talked for hours after that. About Mom. About the time he almost burned down the garage trying to grill on the 4th of July. About how I always slept with one sock on because I hated having cold feet but loved feeling the sheets. Stupid things. Real things. That night, he didn't ask to stay. He didn't make any dramatic promises. He just hugged me, tight, warm, longer than he ever had, and said, Happy birthday, Hannah. It was 2 days late, but it was the first one that counted. Yeah. #epilogue, 2 months later. The lights at his house stayed on. Not because I paid the bill, but because he did. He even set up autopay. He came to my art show, standing awkwardly in a button-up shirt that still had the tags on. When someone asked which piece was mine, he said, all of them in a way, and gave me a wink. We weren't suddenly perfect. We still argued. He still forgot little things. I still had to remind myself not to expect too much too fast. But he came over every Thursday now, like clockwork. Sometimes with barbecue, sometimes just to sit in silence. And this year, when October rolled around, his birthday, I showed up with a daffodil cake and a card that simply said, Still here, just like you.